this regularly scheduled meeting of the Georgetown County Council to order. First on the agenda is the invocation. If Mr. Charlton would do us the honors.
Those of you who can stand, please stand. Holy God, we come before you this night. First of all, Lord, we want to give you thanks. We want to thank you for all the blessings that you've blessed us with. We thank you, Lord, for the beauty and the bounty of this great land that we live upon, and ask that you would keep your hand of mercy upon it. And now, Lord, as this council prepares itself for the business at hand this night, we ask for your wisdom, your guidance, Lord, that we would be good stewards over all things that are trusted in our care. For these things we ask in the precious name of my Lord and Savior. And all God's people said, Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is the approval of the agenda. Note that we're moving Report 9A, 15A, 15B, and 15C up to the forward of the meeting agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Mr. Charlton. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Caroline. All in favor? Okay. Agenda is approved. Next, we have public comment. Teresa, do we have a number of people that have signed up?
Mr. Chairman, if we can start with report 9A.
Okay, that's fine. This is a proclamation to recognize a retiring employee. Carolyn Birdie Richardson. And Mr. Ackerman? Yes, sir, please.
All right, it's on. Mr. Chairman, members of council, I think I got a problem. It is my pleasure tonight to present a proclamation to Miss Birdie. Well, it was Carolyn, but everybody knows Miss Birdie. And I'm sure that all of you on the stage probably know Miss Birdie, and all the county employees in the room know Miss Birdie. Some of the folks in the audience may not know Miss Birdie, but Miss Birdie was our point person in human resources for a little over 21 years. So every single employee coming and going had to go see Miss Birdie. So they all got to know her, and fond memories. People just would call me all the time how helpful Miss Birdie was and all this stuff. So in honor of her leaving, she served a little over 21 years with the county, I wanted to present her with a proclamation on behalf of all of the employees of county council to show our appreciation for all the service that she provided. And if you'll indulge me, I will read that proclamation now. This is a proclamation from the County of Georgetown, State of South Carolina, in honor of Birdie Richardson. Whereas Georgetown County values the contribution of all employees, whether through their service to the public or service to other employees, and whereas Georgetown County wishes to recognize those individual employees who give significant time serving others and or whose particular role impacts a tremendous number of people, and whereas Georgetown County recognizes Carolyn Birdie Richardson as such an individual who through her role as human resources supervisor for over 21 years touched the lives of thousands of county employees. Birdie was the first stop for all new hires. She would answer their questions and give them guidance on everything from tax withholdings to insurance plans. She would oftentimes be the last stop before someone left the county. They came to see her in preparation for retirement or transitioning to a new employer. Outside of onboarding and offboarding, Birdie always had a steady stream of employees coming to her for help throughout the year. Whether adding a newborn onto insurance or helping with the retirement planning question, Birdie was always there to help. Birdie's knowledge of policies, procedures, rules, regulations, laws, and all sorts of other valuable information were always passed on and shared with employees to help guide them in their decisions. For all of the help and guidance she gave over the years, we were truly blessed to have her with us as a member of the Georgetown County team. Therefore, be it proclaimed that on this 27th day of October 2020, Georgetown County recognizes Bertie Richardson for outstanding service to the employees of Georgetown County and wishes her the best in her well-deserved retirement.
Thank you, Ms. Bertie. Do we need to vote on this?
And while you're doing that, just to make it official, could I have a motion to approve the proclamation?
Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Motion by Ms. Johnson, a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Newton, all in favor? Okay, congratulations to our esteemed employees. Next, we have nonprofit spotlight. The Georgetown County and the Bunnell Foundation are partnering to spotlight a local nonprofit at each county council meeting. This week's featured nonprofit is Freedom Readers. The executive director, Dr. Tracy Bailey, will make the presentation.
Council members, Administrator Christian, Ms. Birdie. Good evening. My name is Dr. Tracy Bailey, and let me start by saying it is so great to be home. I am a native of Georgetown County, and my family lives in the North Santee area, where Everett, Carolina represents that area. So I'm so glad to see you this evening. I'm here to speak to you very briefly for the next 8 minutes and 32 seconds about Freedom Readers, so that you will know what we do and what we're all about. Please advance the slide. Our mission is to improve reading skills in low-income communities by providing one-to-one literacy tutoring, free books for home libraries, and an inspiring, high-energy learning environment. We've been chasing after this mission now for 10 years, and we've been able to touch the lives of hundreds of children and give away thousands of books. Go ahead. Since the pandemic, we understand that children really have been affected, and they really have had to, families have had to think about how they're going to assess their children's literacy progress. And that's how we've been able to pivot as an organization. We offer something called the Reading Lab. And any caregiver can contact us, and we'll conduct a reading assessment and assign each child a tutor to work with them specifically. They have weekly meetings online or on the phone, and they exchange handwritten letters every week. In the summer of 2020, we served about 46 scholars, and we had about 35 tutors. But when the fall session came around, we had to increase our services, and so now we serve about 67 scholars. We have about 51 tutors through a partnership with Horry Georgetown Technical College, and all of them meet one-to-one for personalized instruction. This is Evelio, and he is one of our scholars who lives in the Plantersville area, and he is in the 3rd grade. He is one of our success stories. His mom says that he now loves to read, he looks forward to doing it, and he's also practicing his public speaking skills as a part of our program. We also partnered with the Gullah Preservation Society of Georgetown for the summer of 2020. We offered a theme called How Does Your Garden Grow? Miss Lily Jean Johnson can probably tell you more about that, because lots of scholars at her church worked in a garden, planted seeds, and then shared lessons with the other Freedom Reader scholars in 2 counties. So we believe it was a wonderful success. So as you can see, we've increased what we're doing in the neighborhood and in our communities. So the need for our service has increased, but at the same time, because of the pandemic, our funding has gone down. So we are working on an online fundraiser right now that you should know about. Anyone in this room can participate. We're offering sponsorships, but we're also going to give some special people a link to our chocolate making demonstration. For a particular sponsorship, we will deliver a box of handmade chocolates to you. Go next. Our guest host is celebrity chef Jeffrey Blunt, who works at Georgetown Technical College, and he is going to be preparing those chocolates. You may have seen him on the Holiday Baking Championship on Food Network. Next. We know that we are in the minority of nonprofits around the country who are attempting virtual fundraisers, so we hope that you would consider one of the sponsorships listed on the screen, or you can contact me if you'd like to support Freedom Readers. There are other ways that you can help us. We need volunteer literacy tutoring. You can host a book drive, and you can find out other ways that you can get books from our wish list. But what I want to leave you with is this thought. Without a strong foundation in reading, our children will not reach their full potential. We know that kids that are not reading at grade level by 3rd grade struggle to catch up, and many of them do not graduate from high school. We want the best for our students, especially all of those who live in Georgetown County. So let us come together and support them at a time like this and always. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bailey. Next, we have recognition of the Employee of the Quarter, recognition of Georgetown County employee Bettini Walker. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And we have Mr. Ackerman will make the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council. 1 second while we shuffle. So it's my pleasure again to come before you and present the Employee of the Quarter Award to our illustrious payroll clerk, payroll supervisor, Ms. Vashini Walker. Vashini has been with the county for, as of 10/25, 2 days ago, 21 years. In that time, she has never missed a payroll deadline, not once. That in and of itself is enough probably to receive Employee of the Quarter Award. But that's actually why she wasn't nominated. In addition to not missing deadlines, y'all, she has been through hurricanes, ice storms, floods, come across frozen bridges, anything she's had to do to get to the office to make a payroll happen, because you know employees don't like it when their payroll checks don't come. She is always helpful. She guides people, even the same question over and over and over again. She works through it. She gets the departments where they need to be. But recently, Vashini came down with this little thing that some of you have heard of called COVID-19. Even with COVID-19, she sat at home and produced a payroll to keep her streak unbroken. So that is why I nominated her for Employee of the Quarter. That's why she was honored with this award, and it is my pleasure tonight to present her with Employee of the Quarter, which comes with a fantastic plaque and some time off to go on top of it, which she will have to enter into her own into her own thing. So I have to double check behind that. Congratulations.
Well, you're busy tonight.
Yes, sir.
Next,
I missed my daughter because she's going to love this presentation. Our next item up, and I'm not really sure how to do this. We've never done this before. The folks receiving this award, there they are. They're on Zoom right now, visiting us from the Walker Branch Library. And you can see, we're not counting Dwight on the right-hand side, but we're looking at all the folks over on the left. This is the group that is up for what we call an Innovation Award. And this is an award given to an individual or a group of individuals from a department who come up with a new and innovative way. I'm sorry, I will come and, you're showing that to the group?
I was trying to aim it at the camera.
Yes, sir. So this group from Waccamaw Library, in order to come up with an enhanced version of their summer reading program, mainly focused towards children, to prevent the summer slide. And some of you may have heard that term. You know, kids get out of school, and it's reading is a skill and a mental reflex, kind of like a golf swing. If you don't do it for 2 or 3 months, you're rusty. You're not as good at it. So if we can keep those kids interested over the summer, keep them reading, then they don't fall back and they don't lose the ground that they made up in school. So this group came together, and they were kind of charged with creating a unique summer reading program to sort of kickstart interest. And in the COVID-19 environment, they knew it was going to be very difficult. So they partnered with the Friends of the Library group, came up with an innovative way to spur the interest. They created these little cutout figurines that if you go to enough events and you get all of these figurine things, they create this, I think it was like a mobile, like an undersea mobile. So they were all these sea creatures and things. Anyway, it was extremely highly well received. And I'm going to call out the members of the group, and if you can kind of wave as I call your name. We had Amy King, Donald Dennis, Chris Bell, Kendra Corey, and Mallory Allen. And they work, like I say, they work with the Friends group from the library, so we don't have those on. But one thing that I was very impressed with when they gave this presentation is this was a true team effort, and they emphasized this over and over again during their presentation. To tell you a little something, and I'm going to kind of wrap this up, but according to our library director, Mr. Dwight McInville, they had the best summer reading participation ever at the Waccamaw Branch Library, even during COVID-19. So that has to say a lot for the success of the program and the overall outcome of the group's efforts. So at this point, we'd like to present them as a group, and I think this is the first time that's ever happened, to Truman is going to accept the award for them, and we will take the picture. Truman also works up at the Waccamaw Branch Library most of the time when he's not here being a cameraman. So as a group, they will receive the Innovation Award, which comes with a plaque and some illustrious prizes. So please give those folks a hand.
Thank you, Dwight, and your team. Okay, now we move to public comment. Teresa, how many people do we have?
Mr. Chairman, tonight we have 22 speakers signed up.
Okay.
And the chairman has graciously agreed to extend the public comment period of the meeting. That's why we shuffled around a little bit. So each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes. And the first will be Mary Beth Klein.
Good evening. My name is Mary Beth Klein, and thank you for allowing the extension for public comment period. I'm speaking on behalf of Keep It Green, but it's also very personal for me because my 86-year-old mother, who's with me here tonight, lives very close to the Waverly Kings River Road intersection, and we both drive these roads daily. Many speaking tonight in opposition to the proposal to rezone the property at this intersection from single family to multifamily will be repeating much of what's already been shared at all of the prior meetings. But this time we are prepared to share not just the emotional distress that this plan may cause the neighborhood, but the data behind it. While Mr. Gilmore's agent, Mr. Watts, who's here tonight, has improved his plan over the first proposal, the fundamental issue has not been addressed. He is still proposing a plan for 10 families versus the 6 families that this property is zoned for. And that is at one of the most congested intersections and frequently flooded neighborhoods in the lower Waccamaw Neck. 6,000 cars per day go through this intersection, and that does not include when there's an accident on 17, and there's been 3 of those in the last month, and many of us sat for 2 hours on Kings River Road. Why would any planning department, planning commission, or council vote to add density to an area that is already so fraught with risk? Mr. Watts has been trying to sell all of us on the benefits of his plan, but none of that mitigates the additional risk that the added density would bring to the neighbors who are here this evening. He will say that his plan for the 5 duplexes will save more trees than 6 single-family clear-cut lots. And that's true, but experts have shown us, and you'll hear, that 4 to 6 homes can be placed on that property and the same number of trees can be saved. He will tell you that his plan lowers the number of curb cuts and decreases impervious surfaces. And again, the experts here tonight will share that the same can be done with 6 single-family homes or a clustered design with 6 units versus 10. So in summary, and I don't mean to make a play here, but it's Halloween, and Mr. Watts is really using scare tactics to compare his plan to the worst case scenario, when there are many other equally beneficial and viable options for a density of 6 units. So all said, Mr. Watts' plan has many elements that could in fact be beneficial to the neighborhood and to the county. If he modified his design to accommodate 6 families it's zoned for, it would be a win for the neighborhood, a win for the county, and a win for himself. So please vote to deny this proposal and/or send Mr. Watts back to the drawing board with clear direction to come back for a plan for 6 units as it's currently zoned. Thank you.
Bradley Floyd.
Thank you very much. My name is Brad Floyd, and my family and I live in the Silver Oaks community, which abuts the site, or the northeast corner of the Sunnyside Village's site plan on Sunnyside Drive in Merrell's Inlet. I stand before you today opposing the proposed site plan and wish to highlight 3 primary flaws related thereto. First, the plan is not compatible with the single-family homes in this general residential district of Merrell's Inlet. To suggest, as this developer does, that this high-density plan should be approved because all procedural and planning requirements were met is fundamentally disingenuous and disrespectful to this community, and it is only a partial interpretation of the law. The framers of this ordinance set forth in unambiguous language that projects must be compatible with existing development, even if all prerequisites are satisfied. Second, the traffic studies data seems questionable and uncertain in that the same is premised upon peak periods of weekdays between 7 and 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. These times certainly seem appropriate for peak times in a city with a substantial workforce traveling to and from work during traditional work times. I think we all in this room understand that is not the case in Merrell's Inlet. Merrell's Inlet traffic is predominantly non-workforce, and those traveling into the inlet are there for dining and entertainment purposes, and I'd submit a more accurate peak time would be the weekends and a bit later during the day. third and finally, the taking of over 65% of the protected trees in this plan does not align with Section 1301.7's requirement that parcels be established around protected trees. The authors of these tree regulations understood and recognized the patent and latent value of these protected trees as evidenced by the codification thereof in Section 393.10. I submit a plan of taking down over 2/3 of these statutorily recognized trees does not align with the touchstone of preservation, particularly considering the protected trees along the western and northeastern boundaries of the property, the subject property. Ladies and gentlemen, given the aforementioned and the numerous written objections you received from residential citizens and residents, not commercial, residential people that live there, objecting to it, I implore you to deny the proposed site plan. Thank you for your time.
Dr. John Evans.
Good evening. My name is John Evans, and thank you for your time. I'm here again in opposition to the project at Waverly and Kings River Road. I've lived in Woodville Circle, which is directly across the street from the proposed project, for 13 years. And I've said this a few times now that for the past 5 years I've noticed increased flooding. And at first I assumed it was due to just a few storms. But I realize now with minor rains, I'm beginning to get flooding. So I did a little research and driving around the neighborhood and looking at developments and how the water is being pushed in my direction. And then come to find out that stormwater plans are not being, in this case, there is no stormwater plan that I believe has been presented to anybody thus far. There have been plans that have been approved that showed retention ponds, but no actual anybody in the stormwater department has received anything. And one of the things I'd like to read from the stormwater manual is the problem with downstream studies and analysis. This is what's important to me. On-site is fine, and stopping flow rates is one thing, but a downstream analysis shall be provided to determine the effects of project downstream and any potential flooding issues. I don't believe these things are being done. And if they're being done quickly. We've seen increased flooding on Martin Luther King. Obviously, everybody in this room has seen that. And it's been in the paper, it's been in the news. And it's something that we see an increasing problem. And I'm not against development. I'm for it being done correctly and safely for everyone. Whether the project goes to 6 or 10 is just make sure it's not going to harm anybody. And the problem with the traffic impact is another problem that I'll deal with at that intersection and in that neighborhood, because there's another proposed project across the road coming after this one that we've all been exposed to. Calvin Gilmore's property on the other side of Kings River. So we know there's more coming. Development is coming. And we're just asking that you do it in a way that is safe for infrastructure, for traffic, for fire EMS, for when evacuations are needed. Because imagine yesterday with that traffic that was backed up for 9-10 miles from that intersection, I drove it from Martin Luther, from Kings River, all the way to Merrell's Inlet. 9 miles, bumper to bumper, for 5 hours. What if that had been a hurricane evacuation? What if it had been pouring rain? We put lives at risk because we want to increase density faster than it should be done. I say prepare infrastructure first and then allow the building. Everybody wants to come here. Let's do it in a timely manner that is safe for everyone. And I ask, we've asked my representative, Mr. Goggins, to vote no for us. I've asked the people in this room who oppose, please stand. The zoning changes. And the people who are for the zoning change, please stand. In a democracy, we like to go with our representatives to follow what we're asking. My other concern is that the optics of the design plan here for both projects was done by Mr. Goggins, your firm. Now that you're not in charge of the original one, I know that, but it's still, the optics to me is not something that I think is right. And I'd ask, if you don't vote no, that you recuse yourself from this vote to do what's right for the people in your district. Thank you.
Paul Barnes.
Good evening. My name is Paul Barnes. I live at 316 Heritage Drive in Pawleys Island. I come with 18 years of planning and zoning experience in a city that experienced significant growth during my tenure on that commission. I saw it as my responsibility to the citizens of our community to protect existing zoning regulations unless such circumstances existed that the public good would be overwhelmingly served by a change in the zoning. This is not the case of the property at Waverly and Kings River Road. Adjoining property owners depend on existing zoning when purchasing their property. It is not the obligation of the Planning and Zoning Commission nor this county council to help landowners or developers maximize their profits. More to come. There are several statements that are true to the best of my knowledge. First of all, we can develop 6 family homes in there. We're using 2 entrance/exits, similar to the development proposed. Simple fact of using a cul-de-sac. There are many in the community. There will be no additional loss to trees, as I have toured the property to develop single-family homes, but there will be less impervious conditions by building single-family homes. Parking. Single-family home development typically entails 2 cars per unit on average, or a total of 12 cars for that area, just generally. 5 duplexes, assuming that most of them 3 bedrooms, according to national statistics, will have 2.3 cars per unit, or we're talking 23 vehicles, not 12, 23. They have to have a place to park. In conclusion, I request that you deny this request for rezoning of Kings River Road and Waverly be denied. Thank you for your consideration.
Marla Jean Hamby.
Is this on? Can you hear me? Okay. Saturday, I met with Councilman Goggins at his office so that he could download some flooding pictures and a Stantec report that I had in my possession. We then rode over to Bent Tree Lane, a small cul-de-sac street off of Parkersville Road and Martin Luther King. These residents have serious issues with flooding, and their private road has huge potholes as a result. The road is so bad that the post office cannot deliver their mail. They can't have garbage pickup. One of the homes has water that comes up to her front door and on one occasion actually entered. If an ambulance was called, they would not be able to navigate the potholes. The mosquitoes are so bad that they rush into the homes when the doors are opened. The residents just getting to their cars to go to work are swarmed. When they cut their grass or try to have outside activity, it is miserable. One resident had his car flooded so badly he had to replace the motor. The first tow truck that showed up couldn't navigate to even get in to remove the car, and a much larger truck had to be called. The county had previously provided a pump to remove the water, and apparently there was a lawsuit initiated by a resident not even affected by the flooding, and the pump was removed. I appreciate very much the fact that County Councilman Goggins took the time from his Saturday morning to investigate this complaint and include the street in a plan he has for orphan roads. If what the residents are telling me is true, the county bears some responsibility to remedy their road conditions. The stormwater drain that previously carried water away from the community to the wetlands now drains towards the community. The wetlands area is at the rear, which now overflows. The residents say this started when stables, soccer fields were built, and other areas that were built were allowed to send their runoff into that wetlands. The entire county has a stormwater and drainage problem, not to mention flooding. Councilman Carolina's personal home has flooded. Beaumont Road, the Publix parking lot, Kings River Road, Martin Luther King Road have all flooded. Highway 17 in Litchfield has flooded. Merrell's Inlet has flooding, which in my mind is an environmental nightmare happening that is going to destroy the tourist and fishing viability of the inlet, and then it will not just be an inconvenience for the residents. Broader stormwater studies encompassing much larger surrounding areas need to be required before allowing any development to be approved, especially any with higher density. Engineered stormwater studies need to be required and presented and reviewed by stormwater before any plans are even accepted for review by the planning staff. I would ask you to please help Councilman Goggins get his Orphan Road project approved. I have pictures that I'm going to give you. I also have provided 2 poster boards up there, one with flooding examples and also another with single-family homes that could be built on the Gilmore property. There is a stormwater ordinance on the agenda tonight that no one has seen. I asked for a copy and they told me that they were still writing it. I ask that you just defer any action until the council and the public has had a chance to review what is being proposed. Thank you.
Chairman, may I just say
Sure.
one quick thing? I appreciate Ms. Hamby's comments, and I'm happy to report that the administrator is working on an Orphans Roads program. She's delegated it to a committee, and they are undertaking a study, but there are roads within our community that nobody seems to own that have inappropriate drainage or no drainage, and homes are being flooded. So I hope over the next few months we can begin to come up with a plan to address that. So that is being pursued. And our administrator also announced in a recent workshop that we're undertaking a master stormwater drainage plan for the entire county, so that we can, over the next several years, begin to plan infrastructure and cure some of the problems. And our problems seem to be with older communities that have no drainage or were never engineered versus new communities or projects which have to have engineered drainage, which has to meet state regs and local ordinances. So thank you, Ms. Hamby, and thank you, Ms. Christian.
Thank you, Mr. Goggins. Teresa, who's next?
Henry Westendorp.
Oh, to be without the mask. I'm here to speak against the zoning change at Waverly and Kings Road. I could speak at length about the Washington, D.C. Metro, the northern New Jersey traffic situation, but the thing I know best is South Florida, where I was a developer as part of my career. And I want to assure you that what's going on with this request for zoning change is it's all about the money. That is how a developer works. They take a piece of property that's worth X, and they work with county commissions and city governments and et cetera to increase the zoning to 2x or 3x property value. They then use the equity from that money in certain situations to leverage themselves into building the property out. And it happens over and over again. This zoning change is about the money. It's not about the quality of life of the people in the neck. I moved to the neck 4 years ago, and I pretty much immediately recognized that there was going to be a problem because there's only one feasible way to move traffic north and south, and that's Route 17. We all know that. The part that bothers me, I think, is that I have not seen what I regard as the only long-term fix. And therefore, where I live is going to continue to decline year after year after year with more traffic. And the population density is just hugely important to the neck. The longer-term solution, in my opinion, as far as I know, unless they're talking about it up in Columbia, I don't know that it exists. You've got to do a bypass that goes around the area. That would mean somewhere north of Brook Green, you bring another bridge over the river, down through the farmland, and joining it in somewhere in the neighborhood right here to take the through traffic around, and also a tremendous amount of commuter traffic back and forth from Georgetown, north and south. So I would hopefully think that some point in the future you can get that in the planning stage. From what I've seen in the past as a developer, that's going to take Horry County involved too, and most likely Columbia. And probably most of the money to fund that would come from Columbia, and maybe the federal government. But in the meantime, you know, I'm an old guy. I have to live there for the rest of my life, and I've already in 3 years seen traffic increasing dramatically on 17 in front of my property. So there's another thing I'd like to mention. I'm not knowledgeable about what the county does or doesn't do, but in Broward County, Florida, as an example, Broward County created a thing called impact fees. And what that came from is that the county, and this goes back 20 years, this is not new, the county recognized that when a property that would create higher density is to be approved and built, that creates stress on the community. You need more roads, you need more drainage, you need more hospitals, you need more everything, and there's a cost to that. Now, when I bought the 2 acres of land that I built my eventual building for my business on, I paid about $500,000 for the land. Out of that, $115,000 was impact fees. That was Broward County's estimate of what building that building there instead of...
Sir, in the interest of everyone's time, would you wrap it up, please?
I just wrapped it up. Thank you very much for listening.
All right, thank you.
Paula Lawshe. Gary Weinrich.
Good evening, Ms. Johnson and gentlemen. My name is Gary Weinrich, and tonight we again find ourselves faced with contentious decisions on the agenda. Decisions you all make tonight will permanently affect the quality of life and environment for people in this room. These difficult decisions are occurring because recent zoning and land use planning efforts in Georgetown County have not gone well. First of all, we're now nearly 4 years behind schedule in our obligation to revise the comprehensive plan. And since January of 2017, members of the community have asked, often in writing, how the citizens can participate in the planning effort. And for the last 4 years, it's been obvious that the voices of the people in this room have been intentionally excluded from the process. Then, when a draft land use plan finally was released, the residents overwhelmingly told the county exactly what Chairman Thomas told you back in August. The plan is seriously deficient, we must start over and redo it, and we must give the stakeholders the opportunity to be involved in determining the future. The last time the county approved the land use element update was March of 2015, and it included the statement that density was the, quote, overriding issue on the Waccamaw Neck. It also said, quote, the key now is to limit the number of new residential units added, end quote. But since then, the comprehensive plan has been disregarded as a number of high-density housing units and numerous zoning changes allowing higher density have been approved. We're simply not following the plan. And to make matters, the current draft of the land use plan does not even mention overcrowding concern, causing the people in this room to ask, you know, how can a top priority as important as this simply disappear? So let's do a quick what-if exercise. What if the county had given priority to completing the land use element in 2017? And what if they had welcomed public participation? Overcrowding would certainly have been addressed because it was just recently identified as the overriding issue. And the language describing what is allowed in general residential would certainly have been addressed and the zoning ordinance corrected. We've been asking that question for years, but haven't got an answer. So now let's look at the future rather than the past. And what should we do tonight? The first is remand the 115-unit project in Merrell's Inlet back to the Planning Commission with instructions to fully address the neighbors' concerns. Determine how a plan with so many unanswered questions could possibly come before County Council, and instruct the Planning Commission to address the most dangerous intersections in Merrell's Inlet. And if you will hold that thought, we'll be back in a moment.
Thank you, Gary. My name is Jennifer O'Neill, and I'm going to finish Gary's comments. So now let's address the future and not the past. Here's what we should do tonight. First, remand the 115-unit project back to the Planning Commission with instructions to fully address the neighbors' concerns. Determine how a plan with so many unanswered questions could even come before County Council. Instruct the Planning Commission to address the most dangerous intersections in Merrell's Inlet and the community's real-world concerns about public safety. Determine why the tree study allows a proposed building to literally touch the trunk of a 50-inch landmark live oak, and how a 41-inch hickory can be expected to survive dead center in the middle lane of a paved parking lot. Instruct the Planning Commission to show you and the public where stormwater leaving the site will go, and whether existing pipes can carry the flow without flooding downstream residents. In 2012, you signed a resolution acknowledging that Merrell's Inlet estuary suffers from chronic water quality contamination and closed shellfish harvesting beds. And you resolved to be a lead cooperator in watershed management. Are you really prepared to give the green light to a high-density project located a mere 1,500 feet from the estuary without any consideration as to the impact on water quality standards that are already impaired? Ladies and gentlemen, here's how you can put this land use planning back on the tracks. First, remand or deny the projects before you tonight. Then, exercise your legal authority to adjust zoning rules during the comprehensive planning process. To accomplish this expeditiously, you also have the legal authority to enact a temporary ordinance that defers decisions on any project that increases density until the comprehensive plan has been updated. The courts have ruled that these are proper tools which jurisdictions can use that do not infringe on property development rights. This will give the county time to revise the land use element and correct the problems that exist with the zoning ordinance. And most importantly, we will be able to transition from a situation of uncontrolled growth to a future where everyone can be proud that Georgetown County is making sustainable land use decisions. Those in the room that agree with this path forward, please stand. Thank you for your time.
The next speaker is Donna Ellen Pierce.
How about now? Can you hear me now? Okay. All right. Hi, my name is Donna Pierce, and I'm a South Carolina native. I've lived in Merrell's Inlet for about 28 years, and I'm here to oppose the 115-unit housing development on Sunnyside Avenue. I'm here for my child, really. If we continue on our current path of development, how will we sustain and uphold our quality of life, much less the lives of future generations? It seems to me that most of the complaints and problems we have in Merrell's Inlet stem back to one thing, and that's overdevelopment. Flooding, watershed, water quality, traffic, destruction of land. All of these problems could have been in a much better state if we would have looked to the future a long time ago. And that's what I feel like we are not doing here, looking towards the future. You know, I want my child and all children to have the same opportunities that we've had, and that's swimming and fishing in that creek. But due to watershed flooding and overdevelopment, the quality of water in Merrell's Inlet is suffering. I've been in the hospitality industry in Merrell's Inlet for almost 30 years, and let me tell you why people choose to spend their vacations here. It is that salt marsh, the trees, the history, and the charm that Merrell's Inlet has. They don't come here to see large apartment complexes. All right, mic problems. They don't come here to see large apartment complexes, area of land that have been clear cut, that exist in Myrtle Beach, and I would like to think we are a little bit different. If we continue to allow high-density developments in Merrell's Inlet and we start to look like every other overdeveloped place, the tourists will stop coming. I don't know how much money we bring in tax dollars, but I'd imagine it's quite a bit for the county. And what will the county do without that tourist money? When the tourists can no longer brag about eating local fish and shrimp and oysters from the creek, no swimming because of high bacteria levels due to runoff, all those tax dollars go away. And it just seems like common sense to me to protect the land for the environment and the county. I've been an environmental educator off and on for 25 years, and last year my husband and I decided to open our own educational tour business called Merrell's Inlet Tours. I teach salt marsh ecology, tell about Merrell's Inlet rich history, show them an alligator or two. I take tours to Blaine Church parking lot and we gaze out on the marsh, and I tell them how everything is connected, how the ocean feeds the marsh, how it's a nursery ground for so many species of fish. And I brag about how lucky we are to these tourists to have a healthy inlet, and how neighboring marshes not far down the road, they're closed to fishing, clamming, and oystering. I feel like I'm helping to protect, through education, this place I love and call home. I used to be proud of where I live, but I'm not so proud anymore. One side of me sees a government that's not fighting for our future, and I hope to leave the business to my daughter one day. And what will she say to the group she takes out? What will her speech be like on the health of the inlet? Will we still be able to fish and swim and eat oysters? The answer is no unless we act now to protect land in Merrell's Inlet. Our land use plan must think of future generations, and we have to rezone for no high-density developments in Merrell's Inlet. We need to try and save what little undeveloped tracts we have to help offset the damage that's already been done. Land trust, green space, community space, it doesn't matter how it's saved. As long as it is saved, the result's the same. Please fight for us and fight for our future generations by opposing high-density developments in Merrell's Inlet. Thank you so much for your time.
Leon Rice.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Hey, I'm Leon Rice. I'm speaking for myself on the Sunnyside Avenue property, and on behalf of Preserve Merrell's Inlet, Inc., a nonprofit corporation. Included in our mission is preserving the quaint fishing village of Merrell's Inlet and protecting the creeks. This was zoned GR about 1975, this 10-acre tract. With a broad brush, they could not possibly foresee the traffic congestion, the stormwater runoff, and the compatibility issue that exists today. Well, God love them. But you should know that this developer has never reached out to the community to ask our concerns about their plan. We never saw it. This is the biggest thing to ever come down the pike in the history of Merrell's Inlet, the most dense. They have asked for the maximum density in GR for this type of buildings, and it dumps out on a 2-lane road called Sunnyside Avenue. We know this is just a site plan review. I've heard all about that. But this plan is flawed. It's missing key elements that you can take under consideration. There's no stormwater plan stamped by a professional engineer, and we don't know where the water's going. We don't even think they have a stormwater plan. This should go back to the Planning Commission with a plan for the water. Professional engineer. The traffic study also is flawed. They omitted Merrell's Inlet Road, which is a main artery that comes into Sunnyside Avenue about 100 yards from the exit driveways from this project. They did put in the traffic report that it creates 1,700 daily trips in and out of the project onto Sunnyside Road, 1,700. Number 3, there's no certified tree plan in the file. The site plan shows essentially a clear cut of the whole 10 acres, and it says they will retain 100 trees on a 10-acre piece with no shown green space. Number 4, the Planning Commission, and you may know this, when vetting this plan last month, on a 3-2 vote, did not recommend that you accept this plan as is. That should be something that you should take under advisement. In summary, you know, developers tend to ask for more than they think they can get, suspecting that it may come up with some opposition. They and the community could live with half of the density they're asking for, and that is too much, but that would be 55 units. They are not entitled to maximum density just for the asking. There's no absolute right. You are the judge and jury of this zoning as sound planning, determining how to balance the interests of the community and the developer. Personally, I had practiced real estate law for 30 years, and I've never saw an idle threat by a developer ripen into litigation. Why? They don't want delays. They want to go full speed ahead. So in conclusion, I say send this back to the Planning Commission with a message that the developer meet with the 3 concerned citizens groups, PMI, Merrell's Inlet 2020, and Keep It Green, in search of an acceptable compromise for all. And thank you for your time.
Nicole Barksdale.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Barksdale, and I'm a resident in Ricefields here in Pawleys Island. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I haven't seen my elderly parents in 7 months. I no longer can go to church on Sundays because we are in the middle of a pandemic, and yet I feel obligated to come here not once, not twice, not 3 times, but this is the 4th time I have come here. This is the first time I've chosen to speak to you, as I'm not a fan of public speaking. I am adamantly against the request for rezoning at the corner of Waverly and Kings River Road, and any other project on the island that requires rezoning. We're not against development, we're against rezoning. In preparing for this evening's meeting, I asked myself, what could I possibly say to these individuals that hasn't already been said? You already know about the problems of increased density. You already know about increased traffic. You're aware of increased flooding. There's no shortage of housing on Pawleys or in Georgetown County. You've had over 500 emails sent to you saying, we don't want this rezoned. This project does not improve our community in any way, shape, or form. You know all the facts, so that the only thing I can do is tell you my story. South Carolina is the 7th state that I've resided in. I've lived in Connecticut, Massachusetts, Illinois, Washington, D.C., Maryland, and most recently, Virginia. I see the same thing everywhere I go. I'm asking you to stop. Please, just stop. Stop the rezoning and constant building. Stop placing quantity over quality. In Connecticut, I watched acres of farmland destroyed and turned into shopping malls. In Massachusetts, I watched them clear-cut the forest out front of my bedroom window as a child in the hopes of building a home there with a stream running through it in a land that nobody knew would ever, ever perk. They clear-cut it for absolutely nothing. Most recently, I moved here from Reston, Virginia. For those of you who have been attending the meetings, the last 4 meetings, we've had architects from Reston, Virginia here touting how wonderful Reston, Virginia is. For those of you who are not familiar with it, it's a well-known planned community founded in 1964. The founder, Robert E. Simon, who I had the pleasure of meeting when I resided in Reston for 5 years, wanted to build a town that would revolutionize concepts of land use and residential corporate development in suburban America. It boasted parks, lakes, and golf courses, and I'm sure it was beautiful in the beginning, but once again, they just wouldn't stop the building. It's now solid gridlock. Trips to the grocery store are downright painful. You have to run your errands on the way home from work because you know you're not going to leave the house again all night. In 2017, my husband and I discovered Pawleys. We love the people in the small town feel, and we thought we'd find a place to stay. But now it's all in jeopardy by the constant rezoning of the neck. People come here to get away from it all. They come here to relax and vacation here. I'm begging you to please, please stop rezoning the neck. I really want South Carolina to be my last state. I don't want to look for an 8th. Please grant me the privilege of making this my home. Thank you for your consideration.
Art Murphy.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I guess I'm that asshole architect from Reston, Virginia, and I 100% disagree. Reston is a community of 50,000 people. That's what it was planned for. That's what it's ending up as. I'm here to speak not specifically in favor of the Waverly Road project, but in the process of the design and what the zoning says. It may say that there has been this discussion about public necessity, but what the ordinance actually says, according to the Coastal Observer editorial from a couple of weeks ago, public necessity, convenience, general welfare, or good zoning practices as justification. The key word is or, in my opinion. The Waverly and King can check the boxes on at least one justification. It creates useful open space, preserves trees, reduces the number of potential curb cuts on the main road, and manages stormwater runoff on its own site. These are not necessary. Are these necessary conveniences? Necessary conveniences, in my mind, is a nebulous word, but good design practice is also a nebulous word. I think what you're getting here, and I would endorse you to take the opinion of your planning staff, your professional planning staff who have looked at all the facts and figures and have recommended approval when it was 14 units, have recommended approval with 10 units, and the Planning Commission recommended approval as well. We're getting a 40-foot tree buffer, major tree save area, smaller overall building footprint, minimum land clearing, reduction from 14 to 10 units, reduction in curb cuts from 2 to 1. I'm just asking the Georgetown Council to follow the recommendations of not only its Planning Commission, but the planning staff. The Waverly Road change going from 4 to 10, from 6 to 10 is a fair request. The Litchfield Country Club was a valid concern. The Mercon project, valid concern. The Sunnyside issue, a valid concern. But I think the overall benefit of the good design on the Waverly project is worth considering. And I know the Keep It Green people are very much opposed to my viewpoint, but on this particular site, I think what the developer is proposing is keeping that piece of property greener. If you want to see what 6 single-family lots could look at, I ask you to go down to Beaumont Road and see those 1-acre lots clear-cut from beginning to end with 4 houses being built and very few trees saved. Thank you very much.
David Michaud.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. And I've had a home in Merrell's End for over 8 years. So I've been there a long time. And many, many, many years ago, I ran for county council, just like each of you. And Al Schuler was the chairman, and Bill Schwarzkopf was head of planning. And I ran against Glenn Cox, my dear friend, and Wesley Gordon, whom I've grown up with at Merrell's End. And I went to talk to Al about the county and what was happening. And we talked a good while, to be exact, and we talked about zoning and what was happening and what was planned. And of course, he explained the facts of life to me, the fact that the Waccamaw Neck pays probably 80% of the taxes in Georgetown County now. I don't know that figure anymore. But he also gave me a good piece of advice. And in those days, we ran countywide. We did not run with just our area as y'all do now. And he said, when you're on county council, you must think about the whole county. You must think about what is best for all the people that live there. And I took that to heart. And then I later visited with Bill Schwarzkopf, and we went through the planning and zoning and the maps and everything, and I learned a lot about what was happening and what the county was looking for, and most of it has come to fruition. But as I look at this project on Sunnyside Road, I have some fears and trepidations. In fact, a very lot of them. It's too much. We can't dump all that on that road. You need another egress and access. You know, first of all, something's going to be done with the land. I know it's resort, you know, general residential, but that is not what we need to do. We need to think about what's happening and what's going to happen. That is the number one egress and access in the Merrell's Inlet, from Myrtle Beach and from 707. We need to think about that and the traffic it's going to cause. I just don't see where this project fits with the lives that we've all had down there and we want to have. And I just hope that we will reject this. It's just got to be a better plan than the one I looked at 2 weeks ago. Thank you very much for taking time.
Ann Palmer.
Mr. Chairman and county and council members, my name is Ann Palmer. My husband Keith and I live at 311 Sunnyside Avenue. Our home has been in the family since 1944, and we've enjoyed living in Merrell's Inlet. It used to be a quiet little fishing village. It is not that now. Our property is located about a quarter of a mile from the proposed project of Sunnyside Village. We've seen a lot of change in the past 15 years or so, a lot of change. And we're not against growth and development. But we do ask, however, that it be done with proper planning and with careful evaluation of the results of such growth and development. The high-density development being proposed with 115 condo units does not reflect proper planning and careful evaluation, nor does it show the effects this development will have on our community. Traffic congestion at the intersection of Sunnyside and Business 17, which is already a nightmare, will become even more dangerous. Imagine with me using that intersection numerous times a day, coming and going, and waiting several minutes, not seconds, but minutes, before you can make a left-hand turn or just simply try to get across Business 17 to go where you need to go. Unless you're a great swimmer, that is the only way out. The traffic study appears to be ill-prepared and incomplete. We ask that you revisit the study and reevaluate it for accuracy. Our infrastructure does not support the current traffic we have, much less when hundreds of additional cars are added. The stormwater plan is ill-prepared and not prepared according to the ordinance. We request that the stormwater plan be re-reviewed. The quality of water will be further degraded. We swim in the inlet. Some of you have seen us swimming in the inlet. And we are concerned about the added pollution, not only for those of us who take a relaxing dip in the water, but for the birds and the fish and the other natural habitat that love the inlet. We ask further that you review the tree study plan with approximately 200 trees that will be removed. Do we want to look at more concrete than trees? Where will the water go when it has to travel on concrete rather than be absorbed by the trees and the soil? On behalf of the residents of Merrell's Inlet, we respectfully request that you disallow this project as currently proposed. Thank you.
Dan Stacy.
Good evening, Mr. Thomas and members of council. I'm actually here on behalf of the Sunnyside project. I'm available in your agenda discussion of this item 15D if you want to have any further technical questions answered. But I point out, as it's been acknowledged tonight, this property's been zoned general residential for 45 years. And in Georgetown County, according to its zoning ordinance, general residential is the zoning designation to accommodate medium to high density residential. There is a private property rights issue that needs to be before you as well. This person bought the property because of the zoning. This is the reason that it was acquired, because of the capacity to do this. The county can go through the comp plan, I was participating in the public comment section last week, but the underlying zoning does not change because the comp plan changes. This project this is a site plan review for you. This is not whether or not multifamily can or should theoretically go on this site. That was established 45 years ago. Our county has a checklist review system for these site plan reviews. This one has been through your planning staff checklist. It has passed all of the required items. I hear a lot about the traffic study being flawed. EPC did the traffic study. EPC is a well-known traffic analysis firm that is actually used by this county from time to time in its own road planning. So I think they're a qualified traffic engineer, and in their determination, which the materials are in your possession, I presume, that the road systems will support this project. With the stormwater plan being sent back, the stormwater plan hasn't been designed yet. That is being worked on by Steve Strickland with Earthworks. That will be submitted to Ms. Jones at Stormwater. She will provide the professional engineering review that she always does, and we'll make sure that it complies with county and state and federal ordinances with regard to the Merrell Inlet watershed. I'm not trying to be repetitive. Section 607 of your code governs what happens here for site plan review for this project. It is what the code requires and is what the code provides. If you do have the right to change the zoning code, you certainly can, but this project is before you today with the codes that are written. For 45 years, this has been a multifamily site. It meets the comp plan for density. It meets all the other checklists established by Georgetown County that are in place at this moment. I'm understanding that it's unpopular with some members of the community, but this property has also been for sale for quite a long number of years, and any of the groups that wanted to buy it could have bought it and preserved it, and that was not a choice they wanted to make. So now we have a private property owner who has a right to do this as a matter of zoning, and he complies with all of the county ordinances that are in place, and we respectfully request that this site plan be approved.
Phil Russell.
Good evening. My name is Phil Russell, and I'm here tonight in opposition of the development on Sunnyside Avenue. I am a native resident of Merrell. My father, who is here tonight, owns the property bordering the west side of this development. He's owned that property since 1976, and I have lived there the majority of my life. Number one with a bullet is in violation of the county ordinance. This proposed development in no way, shape, or form is compatible with the single home family developments that we have in Merrell's Inlet today. Even more so than that, I'm concerned with the traffic study. I feel that it is flawed as someone who lives there and travels those roads every day. The light at bypass 17, the traffic pattern there was recently fixed, and it is already a problem. At all times during the day, that light backs up, so you're unable to turn left or right onto bypass 17. You're unable to exit Merrell's Inlet Road. And even more so, down on the other end at Business 17, that intersection is already a bit of a nightmare today. You often have to sit there for minutes to make a turn. And I feel that this development will tremendously affect that. I feel that there is probably going to be a need for a traffic light there if this high-density development is allowed. And speaking for everyone in Merrell's Inlet, I don't think anybody wants a stoplight anywhere on Business 17. Another flaw is the stormwater plan. Excuse me, the stormwater plan. There is no approved plan today. My father's property to the side, anytime we get even a quarter inch of rain, his yard is underwater, completely underwater. So I'm very concerned of what's going to happen once this high-density clear-cut development is put in place. I'm also concerned for our creeks and our estuaries. Merrell's Inlet's creeks have been estimated as a $250 million asset, and I feel that's something that we're certainly at risk of losing. Merrell's Inlet has charm and character that is built up over a long time, and that is another thing we are highly at risk of losing. That property has well over 100 live oak trees. Many of them are protected well over 24 inches. And this plan will essentially clear cut this property. We'll lose so much trees and the biodiversity of life in that area. Just last week, I was watching a bald eagle fly over that tract of land. I don't know anywhere else in Merrell's Inlet where that happens too often. In fact, I think that is one of the last great patches of trees and land that we have in Merrell's Inlet, especially on the east side of Business 17. So I am here tonight to implore this committee, do not allow this high-density development in Merrell's Inlet. Do not allow it to destroy the character and charm that we have in this city. Thank you. Good night.
Brandon Truesdale.
Hey, I'm Brandon Truesdale with G3. I'm here on behalf of the owner in regards to his ordinance request for 2047 and 2048. Haven't heard anybody mention it yet, but I'm here to answer any questions y'all might have in regards to the rezoning request and future land use amendment in regards to that project when the appropriate second reading is taken into consideration. Thank you.
Steve Strickland.
Good evening. My name is Steve Strickland. I'm with the Earthworks Group. We prepared the plans for the Sunnyside project. I'll be here to answer any technical questions you have regarding the traffic study or the drainage or the roads when you get to that section. Thank you.
Beverly Sullivan.
Can you all hear me clearly even with my mask? Okay, thank you. Chairman Thomas and members of County Council, my name is Beverly Sullivan, and once again, I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I would like to take some of my few minutes to step away from all that has already been said here, in emails, in the press, and on social media sites, and commend both sides of this proposal. I'm speaking of the Gilmore property. The speakers were clear, their pleas were passionate, and Mr. Watts, I believe, really made an effort to make this palatable. At first viewing of his plan, it was apparent to me that Mr. Watts made a conscious attempt to address many of the objections that could be anticipated. He saved trees, he minimized the taking of open space, he used as many pervious surfaces as possible and illustrated a good-looking visual of the buildings. When he was still met with objections from the community, he revised his plan. He decreased density, he lowered the height of the buildings, and took out a cut-through that was objectionable to the neighbors. I want to commend him for trying to make this as harmless as possible. But the overriding issues here are traffic and flooding, something he cannot do anything about. No matter what adjustments he makes, he cannot stop school bus traffic, he cannot stop church traffic, he cannot keep the roads from flooding, even in a simple heavy rain. His current plan can do nothing, absolutely nothing to minimize the issues that would be created by any plan, single-family or multifamily, that increases even by 1 the current 6-unit density standard, especially in light of the master plan designed by SGA that illustrates an additional 19 duplex units at the very same intersection. A copy of that plan should have been in your package. This master plan could literally be deadly to the people who drive these roads and live in residences nearby. Waverly and Kings River Road is one of the worst intersections in this area for traffic and flooding. To approve this plan would put the people of this community in harm's way. You have the opportunity to make a statement tonight, to send a clear message to the taxpayers of this county that you are capable of putting the people you represent before developers and owners. Yes, owners have property rights, but that goes for all owners, including the owners of property that will be directly impacted by this ill-advised plan. I repeat what was said at a planning meeting. This is a nice plan, but not for this location. I hope that you will consider that in your decision. Thank you.
Bruce Watts.
Good evening. First, I'd like to thank the council and the planning staff for letting me, hearing my request again. Since our last meeting, you elected to send me back for a, because I'd changed my plans, send me back for an approval from the Planning Commission. The commission since then has approved. The planning staff has now recommended our project 4 times. Twice to the commission, twice, counting tonight, to the council. Our request to be a flex design district, the whole reasoning for that is, which has been mentioned by many of our opponents out here, is to try to leave the trees, try to make a lesser impact on the environment. Our footprint on this property as far as hard structures is only about 12 to 15%. Our pervious on this property is 79%. The county is requiring that we do a conservation easement, which we're going to do. A conservation easement is saying that we're going to leave the 40-foot buffer all the way around the property. The conservation easement is not something that you would have in a single-family setup. We're going to go in with our design, and we're not going to increase it. We're going to try to keep it green. Okay, others. Stormwater. At present, our site does not contribute an impact on the roads or surrounding properties. We aren't the cause of this flooding that everyone's talking about, upriver, downriver, upstream, down the road. We're not responsible for that. Our property is not creating this. We've got, which is required by the county, we're going to have a stormwater plan and we're going to maintain our water. At present, we are maintaining our water with our property. And the trees, leaving the trees in the pervious area is going to help that a lot. But we are going to design a retention pond to maintain that. One of the original concerns from a bordering neighbor, property owner, was the building heights, which we were at one time 3 stories high. We've cut that down to a 1.5 stories. We've reduced our curb cuts. That was a concern from the same one. There used to be a cut through all the way through. We've got 1 curb cut. It goes to a cul-de-sac and circles in the inside. We've clustered inside, and that's what allows us to leave this buffer all the way around. This property actually has now been endorsed by the homeowner and neighbor of the property. And actually, his house is the closest one to our driveway, and it borders the back of our property. The traffic. By using the county's guidelines on how traffic, by using the county's guideline on how the traffic is estimated, a single-family lot is 10 trips per day. 6 lots times 10 is 60 trips per day. A townhouse is 6 trips per day. 10 units times the 6 is 60 trips per day. It's a moot point. We've got the same traffic count using the county guidelines as if we had 6 single-family or 10 multifamily or 10 duplexes. Our footprint, again, is only about 10 to 15%, and we're leaving a 79% pervious. I think the merits of our project answers all of this. You know, we're actually trying to leave a natural habitat all the way around our property. I hope you can see that. Thanks. And I do appreciate all the comments. I'm from here also. Years.
Cynthia Person.
Good evening. My name is Cindy Person. I've had a home in Pawleys Island for 30 years. I'm here tonight on my own behalf and on behalf of Keep It Green. Mr. Watts has presented us with a very nice plan. The issue, unfortunately, isn't whether or not this is a nice plan. It's not whether it's better than 6 single-family homes with clear-cut lots, because we've seen that's not the only alternative. The issue is we have a piece of property that's already zoned. So it's about whether or not to change the zoning of that property to increase density when it's in violation of our own land use plan. I've listened very carefully tonight to everyone, and you couldn't ask for a greater number of legitimate reasons to deny this request than we've heard here tonight. I've spent many years of my life advocating before judicial, administrative, and municipal bodies, and I have never encountered such resistance to doing the right thing in the face of so many good reasons to do the right thing as I've encountered here in Georgetown County in the planning and zoning process. And I have to ask myself why. Over and over and over, the citizens, the taxpayers of the county have been turning out in unprecedented numbers, even during a pandemic, to tell you their personal stories about traffic and flooding and safety and how this impacts their lives, and to voice their opposition to any zoning change that increases density. Mr. Watts, if you would provide us with the same plan with 6 units, we would all go home. Everybody would win. There would not be an issue. On top of that, you've received hundreds of emails from people voicing their opposition, and yet, without any regard, Georgetown County Planning forges ahead. You've had public interest groups like Keep It Green, PMI, sending out memos citing chapter and verse from our own ordinances and laws, our own land use plans, pointing out, number 1, the zoning change request increases density by 67% from 6 to 10. It's a violation of our land use plan. Number 2, regardless of whether the county intended for this to happen, our stormwater ordinance, which the FDD ordinance specifically refers to requires an engineered stormwater plan, and so you have an incomplete application before you. And third, there is no legal justification for a zoning change because there's no public necessity. It does not advance the convenience or general welfare of the people, and it's certainly not good zoning practice to violate our own land use plan to increase density. So I would just implore you, you each have your own vote. You're not obligated to follow the lead of anyone else. You've heard the people speak. It's your obligation to represent the people. You have every good reason to deny this plan, and you have no good reason to increase density. Thousands of people are begging you to do the right thing and to deny this plan. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we have one final speaker, Heather Kinder.
Good evening. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak once again. My name is Heather Kinder, and I live in Rice Fields and Pawleys Island. I join with the hundreds of residents that have pleaded with you to reject the request to rezone the corner of Waverly and Kings River Road. I'm here speaking about this for the fourth time. I have been disappointed that this has yet to be rejected, as it clearly goes against the wishes of the community. On top of that, the discussion at the last Planning Commission meeting, the one before that, the last council meeting was primarily procedural. With the exception of one or two officials with a few questions and comments, there's been no real debate, and certainly no reasons given from those officials who have voted to support this request. But tonight I'd like to speak directly to Mr. Steve Goggins. Mr. Goggins, you're the elected councilman for my district, and therefore really the only member of this council who is truly accountable to me and to the other residents of Pawleys Island who are opposed to the rezoning of low-density single-family housing to multifamily dwellings. Now, I've heard it said from folks when I've done some research into you as my representative and talked to folks in the community that you're someone who has a vision for what some would say walkable communities. And you've been in office now for 5 years, and I don't see any of those walking paths. There's not even any construction begun on those walking paths. A walkable community, one of the things that I don't like about Pawleys, very few things, is there's no walking path. I think that term walkable is like mixed use, like cluster development. It's more of an industry term. What we have seen in the last 5 years is 4,153 permits for construction for a total of $492 million in development. Almost $500 million, 89% of that being new construction. Someone's making a lot of money off the development of Pawleys Island. When you say walkable community, what I really think you might mean is something along the lines of market commons. When I think the rezoning of Pawleys Island, or the property rather, at Waverly and Kings River Road, from single family to multifamily townhouses and all the other rezoning that will continue to come before this council will lead to Pawleys Island becoming another Market Commons, another Myrtle Beach. Right now, Georgetown County has approximately 60 people per square mile. In Horry County, just north of us, they have a whopping 282 people per square mile. I'm joined by many, many residents in Pawleys Island in the fear that this rezoning leads to the next rezoning, to the next rezoning, to the next, and so on and so on. If this community will no doubt end up like Myrtle Beach, it might be pretty like Market Commons, but make no mistake, we will be shoulder to shoulder, we will be bumper to bumper, and we will do it while standing in waist-high water. This property at Waverly and Kings has not met any of the criteria for rezoning, yet we find ourselves here again talking about it once more. Mr. Goggins, I ask you and all the council members to please help us keep this community warm and friendly. I am just one voice. I'm not an official member of any group. I'm just a resident like the hundreds of other residents in Pawleys Island. I have a voice and I have a vote. I will continue to use both, and I ask you to help fight this type of spot zoning, be our representative, vote to deny the request to rezone. Thank you all very much.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the regular council session from October 13th, 2020. Is there a motion to approve?
Mr. Chair, I move that they be approved as written.
Motion by Mr. Charlton. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Newton. All in favor? Minutes are approved. By virtue of approving the agenda today, the consent agenda items are approved. That is procurement number 20-051, procurement 20-065, procurement 20-066, procurement 20-073, and a South Carolina Department of Public Safety grant award to the Sheriff's Office. We now move to public hearings. I'll open the floor to public hearings for ordinance number 20-41, an ordinance to amend the millage rates as adopted as part of the fiscal 2020-2021 budget ordinance. Anyone cares to speak about that? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing for ordinance number 20-41. Next, we come to appointments to boards and commissions. We have an appointment to the Georgetown County Airport Commission. Mr. Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You would note in your package there's an application for appointment to the Georgetown County Airport Commission by Mr. Sid Hook. I move that we ratify the appointment of Mr. Sid Hook to serve on Georgetown County Airport Commission.
Motion by Mr. Morant. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Newton. All in favor? Any opposed? Congratulations to Mr. Hood. We now move to third reading of ordinances. Ordinance number 20-41, an ordinance to adopt and certify the updated millage rates under the countywide equalization and reassessment program. Do we have Ms. Administrator or Mr. Deputy Administrator?
Council, this is ordinance number 2041, the Equalization and Reassessment Program, which is required by the state of South Carolina statutes to be done every 5 years. At second reading, you voted to implement the millage cap increase in combination with the rollback decreases, and the ordinance is included in the package, in your agenda package. This action resulted in an increase to the general fund and the law enforcement fund of a 0.3 mils. Midway Fire increased by 0.4 mils, and Environmental Services Fund increased by 0.1 mils from the millage amount in the original ordinance 2018 adopted earlier this year. Staff is requesting that at third reading approval of the Equalization and Reassessment Program ordinance number 2041. Thank you.
Any questions from council? In that case, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we adopt ordinance number 20-41.
Motion by Mr. Newton. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Carolina. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, ordinance number 20-41 is approved on third reading. Now move to second reading of ordinances. Ordinance number 20-42 to rezone approximately 3.28 acres on the southeast corner of Waverly Road and Kings River Road. Ms. Richardson.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Council. This request is for a new 10-unit duplex development located at the corner of Waverly and Kings River and Pawleys. As you know, the applicant submitted a revised site plan for this project back in September, and the issue was remanded back to the Planning Commission for their review. So the report tonight is on the amended plan. The plan shows a duplex development with 5 buildings for a total of 10 units. There is a revised setback of 40 feet, which is an increase from the previous plan of 10 feet. There's a pervious-impervious ratio of 79% pervious and 19% impervious. The building coverage on the site is limited, and approximately 2.36 acres of the site will remain undisturbed with the exception of the required retention pond for stormwater. The plan now shows one access point off of Waverly Road into the development, and the parking materials for the development will be made of pervious material. Three parking spaces are indicated for each unit, which exceeds the requirement of the zoning ordinance. The buildings have been reduced in size from 3 stories to 1.5 story to more complement the existing single-family development. The new net density is 3.27 units per acre, which our comp plan currently defines medium density as anywhere from 2.1 units per acre to 5 units per acre. So this proposal is deemed to be a medium density. The applicant is showing a level 2 buffer against the single-family homes along Partridge Lane. They're planning to retain 87 trees from the site. The largest tree is a 40-inch live oak that will be located near Building 1, which will be retained. And the largest tree to be removed is a 28-inch gum tree. No other trees over 25 inches diameter breast height will be removed for the project. The clustering of the buildings will allow the remainder of the site to be undisturbed and be left as green space with the exception of the retention pond. Stormwater will be handled through a series of catch basins throughout the site, which will empty into the newly constructed retention area that's shown on the plan. The Utilities Coordinating Committee met in August. The only new comment we have based on the amended plan is from the fire department. They do have concern about the size of the cul-de-sac, that it will need to be increased to meet their turnaround, and it could likely necessitate the removal of the tree that's shown there on the plan in the middle of the cul-de-sac. The future land use map shows this property as low-density residential. Low density is currently located to the north, the east, and the south of the tract. And there's a high-density designation to the west. There's medium-density designations approximately 400 feet to the west and 250 feet to the southeast. The expected annual daily trips for this project is 60. This is obviously significantly less than what we would require for a traffic study, which is 500 trips per day. And there is no increase in traffic over the current zoning. If 6 single-family homes are allowed, that equates to 60 trips per day, as do 10 duplex units equals to 60 trips per day. We do have some criteria that are required to be demonstrated when an applicant proposes flexible design district zoning from the ordinance. It does require a narrative from the applicant that talks about how this project better impacts the natural and human environment than a more typical district. We also have a requirement that in an FDD, if higher densities are proposed, they should only be allowed when strong evidence is presented that affordable housing will be promoted, usable open space will be increased, or the natural environment will be enhanced. The proposed plan will allow for 2.36 acres of usable open or green space, and that includes the 40-foot setback surrounding the project. We do not currently have an open space requirement for single-family development. Deed restrictions or conservation easements should be put into place to make sure that those spaces stay green and open in perpetuity. The natural environment will be enhanced by the reduction in the number of curb cuts, the increased amount of dedicated open space, the reduction in the amount of impervious surface, and the natural 40-foot buffer around the perimeter of the property. Staff recommended approval of the amended request based on final approvals from the necessary agencies, including Midway Fire Department. We also included architectural guidelines for this project as part of the flexible design district We're requesting a 612 pitch for the roof of the buildings and that the materials for the building comply with the commercial corridor overlay zone. The deed restrictions to be put in place that I mentioned earlier, an amendment to the future land use map from low density to medium density, and the provision of an easement for a future bike path that would go along the western property boundary of Kings River Road. As you know, a bike path is included in the long-term bike plan that we have for the county, so this would contribute to a segment of that by providing an easement. The Planning Commission reviewed the revised plan on October 15th. 7 people spoke in opposition to the request at that meeting, and numerous emails were also submitted, which you have in your file. After considerable discussion regarding stormwater, trees, changes to the cul-de-sac, the Commission voted 3-2 to recommend approval for the amended plan based on staff's recommendation. Further, they also voted 4-1 to recommend approval for an amendment to the future land use map from low to medium. That request is on for first reading tonight. That request is going to lag one meeting behind because we did not have any recommendation on the future land use map the last time this was here. So you'll see one a step behind the other. And I'll be glad to address any questions you may have.
Any questions from council for Ms. Richardson?
Ms. Richardson, I have a couple questions. Compared to the site plan we now have, compared to whether it was a 6 units residential, which one has the biggest footprint?
Mr. Denton, I think that, of course, would depend on the size of the residential, of the 6 single-family homes. Mr. Watts provided a narrative that's in your packet, and he, I think in that narrative, estimates a 3,000 square foot home. Obviously, you could build a home smaller than that, and you might get under the total footprint for the duplex units as proposed.
With, second question, with the, I've heard traffic concerns all night long. How did we come up with, where is this information taken from? Whether it's the duplex or the residential, it's the same amount of traffic trips per day? Where did we get that information from?
The county has traffic count information in its land development regulations, but they are originally derived from the ITE, the Institute of Traffic Engineers Manual, where they put forth a list of different types of uses and the number of traffic trips they generate.
So this is basically a wash. Whatever we do is going to be the same amount of trips per day.
Once it got reduced to the 10 units, for whatever reason, the estimates in the study that the traffic engineers do show that smaller multifamily units generate less traffic per each unit than a single-family home does.
Once nothing can be built on the site until the stormwater plan is submitted. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. No land disturbance, no turning of dirt, removal of trees would be allowed until a stormwater plan is approved.
And that would be through Ms. Jones, right?
Correct.
Would I'm sure she's guided by all the rules that go with any development. Would she approve anything that, to your knowledge, that would interfere with more flooding in the area that we're talking about?
I spoke with Ms. Jones frequently about this, but I did speak to her just today, and I don't want to oversimplify the stormwater requirements, but basically, Mr. Watts will have to show a flow rate for the amount of water that's coming off his site today, and he cannot exceed that rate. He still has to meet that same rate once the buildings are developed, and he has to discharge that flow at the same location where it is today. So there cannot be a net increase of stormwater flowing off the site, or in terms of the rate of stormwater as it flows off the site after the project.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson.
Any other questions for Ms. Richardson?
Just, Mr. Chairman, if I may, just one, Ms. Richardson, I just wanted some clarification regarding the flooding consideration on that particular track. I was trying to listen closely to your response to Mr. Newton there regarding the flooding aspect of it. Would there be any additional flooding impact by this project being on that particular site? Because I know there has been a lot of discussion regarding flooding in that area in the past. Would this project contribute to any additional flooding, or what impact would it have, if any?
It's my understanding that it should not have any new impact. This development will have to handle its own stormwater. It will have to control the rate. Now, it cannot necessarily improve existing problems, but it's got to handle its own stormwater as a separate site, and the rate has to be the same at the end of the day that it is today. So it should not be increasing any existing flooding problems. I know there are some there, and our stormwater department has been out there as recently as today assessing those issues and looking into things they can do in existing neighborhoods that have issues with outfalls and flooding.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Richardson.
Ms. Richardson, so as it stands now, regarding current flooding issues, until that issue is addressed and corrected, that location will be subject to continuous flooding. Is that correct?
I would assume until some specific stormwater improvements are made and we get similar rain events, you would have a similar occurrence.
Okay. What do we have currently in the planning and the engineering design that will remedy that situation before we review the proposed development? If flooding is going to be an issue, and based on the design of the site, you have your proposed retention on the site, and how will that be incorporated into improving the whole situation? That's flooding. Okay. Now, even with the current proposed design and zoning for the 6 single family, and really, unless it's written in on what specifically is the number of parking or cars allowed and impacting the whole trip scenario, to me it's kind of really hypothetical on, number one, cars. You can have the 10 structure, and it could be 2 cars or it could be 10 cars, so that's 20 cars or 30 cars. Or you could have the 6 cars or the 6 single family and 3 cars, so that's 18 cars times the number of trips. So are we going to have a final look, say, with the possibly the Planning Commission to kind of come to somewhat of a happy medium, a medium that brings in everything considered to make this a reality? So where are we on that? I mean, I'm looking at, and I've heard the citizens, the property owner, traffic study, stormwater design, tree border situation. Because we went through a similar situation here when you talk about the concerns and the rights of the citizens when we purchased the 933 acres in my district. And you're listening to the concerns of the citizens. And we had to fine-tune it and bring it into perspective that you can't put heavy industry in an area of subdivisions where the people are saying we don't want it. So, with all the speakers tonight, well, I've heard them loud and clear on their concerns. And I would like to see the Planning Commission really zero in and fine-tune this scenario, that we can, number one, flooding is still going to be there. That's what I'm saying. Flooding is still going to be there, be it a 2-inch rainstorm, be it a hurricane. That water input is going to impact on that area. For whatever further stormwater design and study and engineering that we can go through and let them speak to say what it is. SCDOT, you have a 4-way stop right now. Whether or not a traffic light would be the solution, I don't see it, or a roundabout. These are some of the things that I'm scratching my head to kind of come up with an idea and envision on how we can come up with a solution.
A couple of things, I think. In terms of a traffic study, for this project, we won't be back with a traffic study because the counts aren't enough to require that. And we're at 60 trips per day, and our threshold is 500. In terms of stormwater, and I'm not the correct person to speak about this, but I do believe that the Public Works Department is looking at the watersheds as a whole and developing master plans to address them as a whole. I do think that work is starting and planned. This project, like you said, Mr. Carolina, would not address that problem as a whole. This project is going to address the stormwater from this site, and it cannot be increased and it cannot contribute to any existing problems any further. Did want to make one clarification about a final plan. What Mr. Watts is requesting here tonight is a conceptual approval. It's a zoning approval to change the zoning of the site. So if the zoning is approved and the conceptual plan is put into place, that will become the zoning for the site. And so unless there are significant changes, then the further plans will be reviewed by planning staff, by stormwater staff, by the regulatory staff to make sure that it complies with the conceptual plan any conceptual plan that was approved by this body.
Ms. Richardson, just to make sure I understand what I heard from you, that we are specifically talking about this piece of property, and whatever storm issues are related to this particular piece of property will have to be the responsibility of the developers, and theoretically it should not affect any other part of the community.
Yes, ma'am, that's what our stormwater ordinance requires, that the pre-development, that the post-development rate after development of the site, that it is equal to the pre-development rate. So it's not causing a negative impact on the stormwater.
Any further questions from Ms. Richardson from council? In that case, I'll open the floor for motions. I recognize myself. We have a document called the Land Use Element of the Comprehensive Plan. This is a document that is supposed to guide land use policy in Georgetown County. It says, and I quote, "The overriding issue in the Pawleys-Litchfield area is population density. The general concept of allowing higher density to prevent sprawl is no longer applicable in this area. The key now is to limit the number of new residential units that are added so that the impacts of additional development, i.e. increased traffic congestion, increased stormwater runoff, greater pressures on our overall infrastructure are minimized as much as possible." Now, there are property owners' rights. Property owners have the right to use their land as it is zoned, Mr. Gilmore has a right to use his property as 1/2 acre single-family residential. Neighboring property owners also have rights. They have a right to rely on existing zoning on land around them and to expect that it will not be changed to their detriment. The way to abide by the current land use element and protect the rights of all landowners involved is to keep the zoning the same. Therefore, I move to deny this zoning change. Is there a second? Hearing none, is there another motion?
Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the applicant's request.
Steve, cut on your mic.
Repeat myself, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we do approve the applicant's request and as approved by the Planning Commission.
Motion by Mr. Goggins. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Second by Mr. Newton. Any discussion?
I've got a few things I would like to say, Mr. Chairman. Number one, been a lot of emails floating around. There have been editorials in the paper about perceived conflicts of interest I've had on this project. And just want to say that as a professional land planner that's practiced in the area for 35 years, I've touched many pieces of property on the neck: Willbrook Plantation, Traditions, Heritage. Those are all communities which I master planned, and many, many other smaller properties. I did do a study on this property 5 years ago, but the current plan has no resemblance to the study I did many, many years ago. I have no interest in this property of any kind, no financial interest. I'm not the planner, the architect, the builder, the developer, nor the investor. And so I've checked with our council and again would like to dispel some of the rumors and assertions and allegations, but council's given me a green light to vote on this. Regarding the proposal, I think this project is an example of why we do allow rezonings. I really like this plan because it's an improvement over what could be put there. This land lays more lightly, or this plan lays more lightly on the land than a 6-unit single-family plan likely would. We know up front what the builder is going to do. If we stay with your current zoning, we have no idea what the builder is going to do other than there could be 6 units. Those units could be 4,500 feet, they could be 3,000 feet, they could be 2,500 square feet. They could have mown lawns. You'll have 6 curb cuts versus 1. So I see many, many advantages to this plan. It does not increase traffic. It does not impact stormwater drainage. Over 2/3 of the property is going to be put into conservation preservation. So I think we sometimes, this principle of density, no density, we sometimes let things like that stand in the way of our good judgment. And we let them stand in the way of a good proposal that this will be. And I really think that a few years from now, when this property is developed the way Mr. Watts intends to develop it, we're going to be very pleased with the way it turns out with the 40-foot buffer, the trees that have been preserved, when compared what could have been built down there. As exemplified by, I think one of the audience said earlier, go down to Beaumont and Kings River Road if you want to see what could be done. And that's literally what could be done on this tract with the current zoning. So all that said, I would appreciate the council's support, but again, I move we approve the request.
Any other comments? All in favor?
My concern, sir, is that that we absolutely come up and address, as council has mentioned, the location at Kings and Beaumont, that we seriously address the issue of the flooding. I mean, you know, we've talked and heard that that's going to be an ongoing situation. It has to be addressed.
It's one of my highest priorities, Mr.
And
Carolina.
even if we have to call on our staff to address that issue, that's first and foremost. That's a major situation.
Agreed.
And I hope we keep that in mind. That's major.
Yes, sir.
Because without it, without the development, you're still going to have the flooding issue. And retention of water on your property, not to cause further problems. We don't want to exasperate it anymore. And throw all the forces in to try to remedy the situation.
Thank you, Mr. Carolina. Hearing no more discussion, call for a vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Unfortunately, the ordinance 2042 passes on second reading. We now move to ordinance number 20-47 to amend the future land use map for two parcels located on Old Kings Highway on both the northwest and southwest corners of Pond Road and Merrell's Inlet. And I believe this is related to the next ordinance 20-48, which is to change the land use.
Yes, sir. I'll do these two items together if that's okay.
I'm sorry?
11A. Was that motion to be amended?
Oh, sorry. For the Waverly and Kings River Road one, we are, since we're not, we need a motion and a second to amend the ordinance because the plan was revised. So, Mr. Goggins, if you would change your motion, please.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we amend the future land use plan for the parcel. It's under consideration at the corner of Waverly and Kings River Road. Amend the future land use plan.
And incorporate the revised plan change.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, this is a amendment to the original motion, so we're voting to amend the original motion. All in favor?
Wes.
Any opposed? Okay?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, as a point of order, the amendment, you're making a motion to amend to include the textual changes, the text changes that were added, and it doesn't have anything to do with the future land use map. I don't know if that's what you meant to say or not, Mr. Goggins, but that's what came out.
Okay.
Okay, so the motion is to change the text to reflect the changes in the site plan. Is that correct?
Right, to approve, yes, sir, to approve the Planning Commission's recommendation in favor of the applicant's revised plan, which are the changes in the plan.
So the motion by Mr. Goggins is to amend the original motion to incorporate the revised text. All in favor of that? Any opposed? Okay, back to the
Thank you.
original motion. All in favor of the original motion to approve? Any opposed? Okay. So ordinance number 20-42 is approved on second reading, also to include revised text. Okay, on to ordinance number 20-47, and that is also related to 20-48. Is that correct, Ms. Richardson?
Yes, sir.
Want to do both of those at once?
Yes, sir. This involves 12.6 acres located on Old Kings Highway on both the northwest and southwest corners of Pond Road and Merrell's Inlet. And this request is to go from MR10 and forest agriculture to general commercial, GC. The owner is proposing to use this property for warehouse or outdoor storage. and the parcels meet the minimum lot area requirement for the commercial zoning district, which is 10,000 square feet. The GC zoning district does not specifically allow for warehouse uses, but it does allow for self-storage facilities if the lot size is at least an acre. Open yard storage is also allowed in GC with some conditions. It can't include junk or salvage storage, and they have to be separated from adjoining residential uses by a suitable fence or wall. We have surrounding tracts to the north that are both FA and GC. Tracts to the west and the south are FA and GC, and there's also a commercial plan development across the street. The western boundary of the parcel, located on the southern side of Pond Road, does abut an existing single-family neighborhood, so a level 3 buffer would be required there if commercial development happens on this tract. Future land use map designates this tract as public or semi-public. Our best estimate as to why that's the case could be because the hospital currently owns the tract, and maybe that's why it was designated that way at that time. Property to the east is designated as commercial, and the future land use map would need to be amended to facilitate the request. Staff recommended approval for the request based on the adjacent GC zoning and the nearby commercial future land use designation. A public hearing was held by the Planning Commission back in September. At that time, several people spoke at the hearing in favor of the request for commercial zoning, and the Planning Commission voted 7-0 to recommend approval for the rezoning request, as well as a proposal to amend the future land use map to commercial for this tract.
Any questions from council for Ms. Richardson on either ordinance number 20-47 or 48? In that case, I'll entertain a motion for ordinance number 20-47 to amend the future land use map.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we adopt ordinance 20-47 to amend the future land use map to classify this property as commercial.
Motion by Mr. Newton. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Carolino. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Ordinance number 20-47 is approved on second reading. Entertain a motion for ordinance number 20-48 to rezone that property. In that case, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 20-48 on second reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Goggins. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? 20-48
Was there-
is, what?
Do we have a second on that?
Yes, by Mr. Goggins.
Thank you.
Okay, ordinance number 20-48 is approved on second reading. Move to ordinance number 20-49 to amend the future land use map for a parcel located on Browns Ferry Road. Ms. Richardson.
Yes, sir, and ordinance number 20-50 will go along with this one as well. So I'll do those two together.
All right.
This is a request from a Mr. Holmes to rezone a parcel located on Browns Ferry Road from Forest and Agriculture FA to Village 10,000 square foot residential or VR10. Property is surrounded by FA zoning to the east, west, and south, and VR10 zoning to the north. VR10 zoning is also located to the south along Holmes Drive. The surrounding uses are single-family with some vacant lots on the south side of Browns Ferry Road. The tract is approximately 1 acre in size and meets the minimum size for the VR10 zoning district, which is 10,000 square feet. In 2011, the council rezoned the large tract to the northwest along with some other parcels from FA to VR10 to address heirs property. VR10 zoning is the only district that currently allows for multiple residential uses on a parcel. They still have to meet the density of 10,000 square feet for each unit, but it does allow for multiple uses without subdividing, and again, that was mainly to address heirs property in some of these areas. Future land use map designates this property as low-density residential, and it will need to be amended to medium to facilitate the request. Staff recommended approval for the proposed zoning based on the surrounding VR10 zoning and the close proximity of the medium-density residential designation on the future land use map. Staff also recommended an amendment to the future land use map. Planning Commission held a public hearing on this back in September, and no one but the applicant was present to speak. The Commission voted 7-0 to recommend approval to changes to both the zoning map and the future land use map.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. Are there any questions from council? In that case, I'll entertain a motion for ordinance number 20-49 to amend the future land use map for this parcel.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of ordinance number 20-49.
Motion by Mr. Morant. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Ordinance number 20-49 is approved on second reading. I entertain a motion for ordinance number 20-50 to rezone the same parcel.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of ordinance number 20-50.
Motion by Mr. Morant. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Ordinance number 20-50 is approved on second reading. We'll enter the ordinances for first reading by title only. Ordinance number 20-52, ordinance number 20-53, and ordinance number 20-54. We now move to item number 15D, site plan review, 115-unit multifamily development located on the north side of Sunnyside Avenue in Merrell's Inlet. Ms. Richardson.
Yes, sir. This property is located on the north side of Sunnyside Avenue in Merrell's Inlet, approximately 250 feet west of Business 17. Single-family and multifamily uses are both permitted uses in the general residential zoning district. The GR section requires a site plan review of Planning Commission and County Council for any multifamily development that exceeds 10 units. The review by the Planning Commission and County Council is limited to compliance with the county's land use regulations. This isn't a case where they are requesting a different zoning. This is a development of the tract based on existing zoning, so the review here is limited to the requirements of our ordinances. The applicant is proposing a two-phase multifamily development. So one portion of the tract is proposed for 20 duplexes or 40 duplex units. And the other side of the tract is proposed for 5 15-unit condo buildings in phase 2 for a total of 115 units. The duplex section has a proposed net density of 8.23 units per acre. This complies with the GR zoning district limits for duplex units. Each lot shown there has a minimum of 8,000 square feet, and the parcels front on a proposed 50-foot right-of-way, with the exception of 2 of the units that front on existing Sunnyside Avenue. The second phase is the multifamily or the condo phase of the project, and the number of units as shown meets the minimum lot area required in the GR zoning district. The net density of this phase is 13.84 units per acre. The proposed plan complies with the 25-foot front yard setback as well as the 10-foot side yard setback and the 20-foot rear yard setback. Phase 1, or the duplex section, has a pervious-impervious ratio of 60-40, and Phase 2, the multifamily section, has a pervious-impervious ratio of 51.2 to 48. Both phases exceed the 50-50 ordinance requirement for GR. The zoning ordinance requires 2 parking spaces per unit in Phase 1 and 2 for each condo unit in Phase 2, and the project exceeds the parking requirement minimum of 230 spaces. In terms of buffers, the project requires a level 2 buffer on the west side because in that instance we have multifamily or condo units that abut an existing single family. In that case, the ordinance requires a level 2 buffer. In this case, the new plan that you have before you, the developer is proposing to increase that to a level 3 buffer on the west side. where we have a duplex project adjoining a commercial use, or a multifamily adjoining a commercial use, or a duplex project that adjoins a single-family use, no buffer is required per our existing buffer ordinance. On the new plan in front of you, the developer is proposing to put a level 2 buffer against the 2 single-family homes from Silver Oaks that abut this tract. That was a concern that came out of the Planning Commission public hearing, and the developer has proposed that change since that meeting. The site contains a total of 289 protected trees according to the tree survey. 189 trees are marked to be removed and 100 trees remain. 12 of the trees on this site our ordinance classifies as grand trees, meaning they are over 30 inches at diameter breast height. This plan shows that all grand trees will be maintained. We do attempt to review plans to save as many trees as possible, and we do often ask that buildings be shifted, parking lots be shifted, landscape islands be moved to save as many of not only grand trees but protected trees as possible. Our ordinance does specifically prohibit requesting that a building be reduced in size in order to save trees. Again, on the grand trees, we do have a little bit more flexibility to request that the layout be designed around those, as has happened in this case. Stormwater for this project will be handled with a series of catch basins and pipes that will flow to 2 stormwater retention ponds along the south side of the project. The ponds will be designed to control the post-development runoff rates to be equal to or lower than the pre-development runoff rates, which will be controlled by an outfall structure. The ponds will be designed to store the required water quality runoff volume and to discharge that water over a 24-hour period. This proposed project is expected to generate an additional 850 daily trips. So a traffic impact analysis was required for this project. Based on the traffic analysis results, the traffic engineer is not recommending improvements at either the intersection of Business 17 and Sunnyside or 17 Bypass and Sunnyside as a part of this project. And just to get into the details a little bit of the traffic study process, the traffic engineer looks at those intersections that were predetermined to be studied and looks at a current traffic count. Then he applies a growth rate to that traffic. So he anticipates what the traffic will be, in this case, in the year 2023. And he looks at what that traffic will look like in 2023 without this project. It's called a no-build scenario. And then he looks at what the traffic would look like in 2023 with this project. And each of those scenarios is given a grade. It's called a level of service in traffic speak. And for this project, according to the traffic engineer's analysis, that grade that he assigned to the no-build scenario, so 2023 without this project, the grade is the same in 2023 with this project added. So the traffic analysis determination is that the grade, that the amount of time you sit at the intersection, the safety, the turning movement, the difficulty you have turning is not affected by the installation of this project in 2023. So like I said, the engineer isn't recommending approvals at those intersections. They also do a site access study, and in this case, what they are recommending is that the entrance to the site there on Sunnyside be a simple one way in and one way out. The staff recommended approval of the preliminary plan conditional on the following: final approvals from Georgetown County Water and Sewer, Merrell's Inlet Garden City Fire Department, and the Georgetown County Stormwater Department. Need a street name application for the new street, submittal and approval of a tree replacement and landscaping plan, and encroachment permits and a waiver from DOT for the minor access for lots 19 and 20. Planning Commission held a public hearing on this issue at their October 15th meeting, and 7 people spoke in opposition to the plan. Major issues that were discussed are essentially the same ones that have been discussed here tonight: stormwater and drainage, the traffic study, the high density that is proposed, the need for buffers, and the idea of compatibility. And that comes from the intent section of the general residential zoning district language. And the intent section is provided for all our different zoning districts. This is a section we would look at if someone was looking to rezone their property to GR. What is the intent of GR? In this case, this property has already been zoned to general residential. So at some point in the 70s or whenever this property was zoned, the intent was there to develop it under GR zoning. After a good bit of discussion regarding the traffic study, the loss of trees, the estuary there in Merrell's Inlet, the density and stormwater, a vote to approve this plan at the Planning Commission failed with a 2-3 vote. So the Planning Commission did not recommend approval for this project. The site is zoned for high-density development. I did want to get into the traffic engineer also submitted a letter based on the comments that were brought up at the Planning Commission meeting. There was some discussion about Merrell's Inlet Road not being included. That was not part of the traffic engineer's scope of study. He does state in his letter that he does not believe this to be a major volume of traffic. He cited traffic counts on Macklin Avenue near Merrell's Inlet Road that do not show a significant volume of traffic when compared to the existing traffic on 17 Business and 17 Bypass. There was also some discussion at the meeting about a peak traffic hour, and that the peak traffic hour that was used is not a true peak traffic hour for Merrell's Inlet, and the engineer has submitted documentation from a traffic count over the whole day period demonstrating when the highest peak of traffic is, and it was between the 4 and the 6 o'clock hour on that specific day. It also brought up a question about new townhouses that are being built on Merrell's Inlet Road and whether those were addressed in the study. And that development and any new development that happens between now and that 2023 period would be included in the 2% growth rate that the traffic engineer applies to the counts at existing intersections. So when he grows those existing traffic counts to look at what it will look like in 2023, he grows them by 2%, so new development would be included in that percentage. Staff is recommending approval of the site plan based on its adherence to current zoning requirements.
Any questions for Ms. Richardson? So with the staff recommending approval, staff is saying that, that this site plan complies with the land use regulations of the county, is that correct?
Yes, sir. The zoning ordinance requirements, yes, sir.
Any questions for Ms. Richardson? Open the floor for a motion.
I make a motion that we adopt ordinance site plan for the multifamily development located on the north side of Sunnyside.
Motion by Mr. Newton, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Coggins. Discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Site plan review is approved.
Thank you.
Next, move to emergency ordinance number 20-55. Mr. Bryant.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, good evening. It's late, and I understand that I am the only thing between you and supper. It seems that I have that privilege lately, so I'm going to be brief. We've gone over both of these before. This ordinance combines a state of emergency with a emergency face covering ordinance. Both of these are emergency ordinances. They will only last this time for a little less than 45 days, simply because they will track to the only council meeting in December, which will be December 8th, and we will revisit if these pass tonight, we will revisit that, both of these on December 8th. Just some quick numbers. As of October 22nd, Georgetown County has experienced a total of 2,238 positive cases, resulting in 49 deaths. South Carolina has experienced 166,357 positive cases, resulting in 3,708 deaths. I do want to point out that yesterday evening, Thailand's health system released some information that they are currently housing 32 COVID patients. 3 of those are on ventilators. Thailand's Georgetown is currently operating at 131% occupancy, while Thailand's Waccamaw is operating at 106% capacity. I do note that 20% of those numbers are inpatient COVID positive cases. We have seen a slight increase lately in Georgetown County, so there is justification to extend this face covering ordinance, also this state of emergency. That's it. I will be glad to answer any questions, but the bulk and the substance of both ordinances are, as you have seen before, with no significant changes. And this will take a 2/3 vote to approve.
I'd just like to say that you referenced a statement from Thailand's hospital. As part of that, Dr. Gerald Harmon, Vice President of Medical Affairs at Thailand's Health, said, and I quote, "It is imperative we slow the spread of COVID-19. As healthcare professionals, we continue to sound the alarm. This virus is a real threat to the people of our community, and we must all work together to protect one another. Wear a face mask," he said. "Practice social distancing and wash your hands frequently. Taking these simple steps will help limit the spread of COVID-19, help us get control of this virus, and help keep our healthcare resources from becoming overwhelmed." Any other questions from Mr. Bryant from council?
No questions, but continued statements also that in addition to Dr. Harmon, you had 12 Georgetown County public school students currently COVID positive and 15 district staff members also positive. And it was announced that a member of the Andrews High varsity football team is tested positive, and as a result, the coaching staff has been placed in quarantine, and their upcoming game with Waccamaw this coming Friday has been canceled. And with all the data, information, that we consider all of these things and to continue the mass ordinance.
Anything else from council? Open the floor for a motion for the emergency ordinance number 20-55.
Mr. Chairman, I move for adoption of emergency ordinance number 20-55.
Motion by Ms. Johnson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Carolina. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of emergency ordinance number 20-55? Any opposed? Emergency ordinance number 20-55 is adopted. Motion to adjourn. Second?
Second.
We are adjourned.